Dragon Ball was one of the first animes that I've ever watched. You could even say it was the gateway anime to other animes for me to watch as well. I would watch Dragon Ball Z Kai with my dad all the time in an old TV network, Vortex. Dang, I feel old. I would also watch my peers play Dragon Ball games on the DS at church every Sunday, or at least some Sundays. It's been a part of my childhood all the way to my teenage years. The reason being for this video right here is to tell you guys with a heavy heart that the creator and author of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, has sadly passed away. Words cannot describe how distraught I was to hear about this news yesterday. As of this recording, it's March 8th, but this video is more likely to come out at a later time. But that aside, in this video, I'm going to be telling you about my Dragon Ball journey to put respect towards Toriyama's name. Before we get started, though, I would like to personally thank him for creating such an amazing show. Dragon Ball wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for him. Without him, there would be no Dragon Ball Xenoverse, no Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, no Dragon Ball games in general, like no Dragon Ball shows, mangas, created by Taro, fan mangas. None of it. None of it would be possible if it wasn't for this legendary writer. It's actually because of him that I created my inner Saiyan to keep motivating myself to move forward in life, as well as listen to Dragon Ball soundtracks to get my work done at school and just jam to it all the time. There's just so many things that he's done for us that I don't know how to thank him for. But with that aside, let's get started with this. When I was just 5 years old, there would be a TV network that would come on every Saturday called Vortex. They would put on shows like the Justice League, WWE Saturday Morning Slam, Sonic X, and Rescue Heroes. But we're not here to talk about these shows, because amongst those shows that would air, of course, would be none other than Dragon Ball Z Kai, the first Dragon Ball show that I've ever watched. It brought good memories into my life as a toddler, even though I found the sound effects of some of the characters going Super Saiyan to be menacing. Yeah, that aura. I would watch it every Saturday just to see what Goku was gonna do to Frieza, and as well as the episode where the Cell Juniors are completely destroying every Z fighter in the Cell games, like Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, Piccolo, everybody except for Gohan, who would just be watching as he watches his peers like getting completely destroyed until he had it to a point where he, of course, transforms to Super Saiyan 2, and I would question like where the lightning that was surrounding him would come from during his transformation. Like it was so interesting and cool. The Saiyan Saga, Frieza Saga, and the Cell Saga were the only arcs that I've watched as a kid until many years' time. And that's where the next part of the story comes in. Years later, after my experience with Dragon Ball Z Kai, I moved into a new house near my hometown in St. Louis. When I was given a little TV for my room that I had to share with my brother, I couldn't find the Vortex channel for me to catch up on more episodes of Dragon Ball Z Kai. Little did I know that they would discontinue airing shows on Vortex in the year of 2014. It made me forget about what Dragon Ball was, so I would have distant memories about my distant childhood. It stayed that way until one day, one of my family members decided to give me a new console. It was the PlayStation 2. I had the least amount of games so far, but it was enough to keep me entertained. Amongst those games were finally none other than a Dragon Ball game. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2. That game finally gave me experience of what Dragon Ball games were like on PlayStations. So far, it would just be me beating up all the characters in the roster up to a point where one day when I was training to improve my skills during training mode, my dad would ask me if some of the characters could transform into their Super Saiyan forms. I would tell him that no matter what I did, I couldn't get them to transform. Then he asked if I had to go through story mode to unlock some of the characters and their transformations. Then I would look into one of the options of the game, up to a point where I ran into an option called Dragon Adventure. There I was able to experience the story mode of the game. The Saiyan Saga would of course be the first one I played. It was really fun. Even though in one scene I would question why Nappa was shirtless after he was pushed by the Z Fighters during the Saiyan Saga. Everything would go smoothly up to the point where later on I would finally reach the fight against Vegeta. So far I was able to beat him easily, in his humanoid form, that is. And the reason why I say that, because obviously it came to a point where he pushed him to a point where he would transform, obviously, into his grade 8 form. At first glance, I was scared to go up against him, and I was at the screen where I had to choose Goku to fight him before the fight. When I first looked at his picture, for some reason as a child, he looked completely menacing to me. And I forgot to mention, as Piccolo, I had to go up against Gohan's grade 8 transformation. I don't know how I overcame that fight, but for some reason was so scared to go up against the same thing, except it was Vegeta. I don't know what it was that made him look so menacing. Maybe it was his Saiyan armor. Maybe it was the fact that he could talk to Goku while in his grade 8 transformation, because Gohan couldn't do that. He can only rage and scream and all of that. So yeah, long story short, I had to turn the game off. I had to calm down. I just didn't know how to get over that fear until like weeks later I realized if I didn't beat grade 8 Vegeta, I wouldn't unlock the secret characters that come out of the story mode. I wouldn't unlock the transformations within the characters. None of it. So I had to fight him. I had to face my fear. So far, melee attacks didn't work, so I had to keep on shooting the Kamehameha blasts, which was the only thing I could do at this point. I finally beat him as Goku. I still had to fight him again one more time. This time, Krillin, Gohan, and for some reason, Yajirobe, all three of them showed up. And yeah, at that fight, I didn't want to use Goku because Gohan had more powerful attacks. Like more powerful key wave attacks at least, and that was able to damage Vegeta. Like the fight lasted no longer than 5 minutes. That was more than enough time to like completely distinguish Vegeta. And before you knew it, grade 8 Vegeta was no more. Only his humanoid form remained. After fighting that Vegeta a couple more times, that would of course conclude the Saiyan Saga. I'm going to skip the next few sagas since they weren't at all that important to the main show, and of course move on with... Before we get started to this, I would just like to say that I'm still going to be talking about my experience with Budokai Tenkaichi 2, and not about the lore. I'm rarely going to be talking about the lore. And yeah, I'm just gonna be talking about the lore once with the Frieza saga. I don't know about the rest. And yeah, there's not much to say. Let's get started with this. There's not much to explain about the Frieza saga really, other than the game starting off with Vegeta killing some of Frieza's weaker soldiers. Little did I know that the lore behind this, the reason why the Z Fighters were heading to planet Namek to begin with, was because that they needed the Namekian Dragon Balls to revive those who were killed by Nappa and Vegeta back in the Saiyan saga. I cannot speak. The names of Frieza's soldiers were almost embarrassing and weird to pronounce. The game itself wasn't focused on the Namekians that lived on Namek. They were just focused on the fighters that were on the roster that were in the Frieza saga to begin with. Fast forwarding to Vegeta's fights against the Doria and Zarbarn, there's really nothing to say about the Doria other than the fact that I used to think that he was a female. Yeah, it was a pretty stupid idea. Zarbarn, he may talk and act like a female, but his transformation at first glance, It wasn't that good. None of them piqued my interest. They were just, I don't know. They were side characters to me. That's how they felt like. Fast forwarding to the fights against the Ginyu Force, none of them piqued my interest. Jace had a weird accent. Goldo was the weakest of the bunch. Raccoon, he was just weird. Birder, he wasn't too bad. Ginyu, I don't like his main move, where he hits the body swap with his opponent. Birder was pretty broken to use in the game. Other than that, none of them piqued my interest, and their poses were pretty lame. Fast forwarding to the fight against Frieza, his transformations were kind of menacing to look at, but not to the point where it would frighten me. Just like it was with Great Ape Vegeta back in the Saiyan Saga. Yeah, we don't talk about that. All I could think about with Frieza is mopping the floor with him with Piccolo. Same thing with Goku, especially where he gets to use the Super Saiyan form, and trust me, it felt pretty broken to use him. And when Frieza got to a point where he transformed to his full power, it looked kind of menacing at first when you look at his picture, where you had to select your character before the fight, but not to the point where it would scare me like it would with the Great Ape forms. And that about wraps it up with the Frieza saga. I'm going to skip the scenarios that I had to do before the Cell saga since they did not serve a purpose to the main show. So we are going to move on. The Android saga starts off with, of course, Frieza and his father King Cold, who I actually was surprised that he was taller than Frieza. Frieza came back with new robot body parts after he suffered a loss against Goku on the destroyed planet Namek. Frieza's race is able to survive the vacuum of space, hence why he came back. But more to the fight. Using Super Saiyan Future Trunks and Saiyan armor was better than using the Trunks with the sword. But I had to use Sword Trunks just so I can move on with the story. And yeah, that was just about it with the beginning of it. Fast forwarding to the fight with the androids, the lore was exactly how Dragon Ball Z Kai described it back when I used to watch Vortex as a child, so I was more interested in the gameplay than the actual lore. Using Super Saiyan Goku again wasn't too bad. I was more excited to use it when I had to fight Frieza with him the first time. Vegeta's moveset, on the other hand, was extremely fun to use, both in his base Super Saiyan and his bulky Super Saiyan form. Other than that, there was nothing else to explain about the Android saga. The Cell saga, on the other hand, was kind of cool. There was something I always wanted though. Why does Cell sound like this every time I kick him across the board? More on that later. Fast forwarding to the Cell games. Gohan's Super Saiyan 2 form was pretty good to use as well as the other Saiyan Z fighters. The game wouldn't explain how Goku would use its instant transmission to sacrifice himself to save Earth by taking Cell to King Kai's planet, so Cell could blow up there. I always thought Cell would be a tough opponent after when he came back, but he really wasn't. But Gohan's Super Saiyan 2 moveset and melee attacks were faster than even Burner's attacks, which made him pretty sick. And that wraps it up with the Cell saga. Moving on to my first time experiencing Now this is my first time learning about the lore behind this arc in the video games. I would have learned about it if I was still able to watch Vortex again like I've been shown watching it years ago. But I wasn't able to find it since I couldn't find the channel on the TV that I used to have back when I would stream Dragon Ball Z Kai as a child. So I didn't know if they aired Dragon Ball Z Kai, the final chapters, on the Vortex channel or not. But back to the gameplay. The game wouldn't explain how Gohan started his life in high school and slacking off, but they would show how Gohan would fight criminals as his new superhero named Great Saiyaman. I didn't like the fact that you could even transform into his Great Saiyaman costume after going through his Super Saiyan 2 form as adult Gohan's. And matter of fact, they should have made that role for Ultimate Gohan instead of the Great Saiyaman costume, and could have made the Great Saiyaman into a whole other character. But again, back to the gameplay. They wouldn't explain how after Gohan dealt with the criminals, Videl obviously blackmails Gohan into fighting the tournament. Fast forwarding to Vegeta's training session with the newly grown-up kid Trunks. I thought I was able. I thought I was going to beat Vegeta since Vegeta clearly won in a training session, but they wanted me to try Trunks. I've always wondered why they called Vegeta's Buar character from the roster Vegeta's second form. I mean, I don't even know what else they could have called it. That's all I'll say with that. So, at first I was shocked that Trunks and Goten already had their Super Saiyan forms, but years later, when I was finally able to look up on Google as to why, there was two answers, but I didn't know which one was correct. The first one was that they had S cells, so it was easier for them to transform. The second one was that their fathers Goku and Vegeta could transform into Super Saiyans long before Goten and Trunks were born, which it makes sense since it was a struggle for Gohan since he was born before Goku was a Super Saiyan, so it makes total sense. Fast forwarding to the tournament, Goku comes back to Earth for a 24-hour pass given by King Yama, so of course he couldn't wait to crack at it with the tournament as well. Speaking of the tournament, that's exactly what we're going to fast forward to. Trunks and Goten make their way to the final rounds of the Junior Division, making them having to fight against each other. Of course, the game would make me play as the person who won the tournament. There wasn't enough space for me to let loose as a character, so I just shoved Goten to where he would get a ring out. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of what the champion would do if they won the tournament. So, yeah, there's that. We're not going to talk about it. The game would of course skip Gohan's desperate struggle against Baku's minions, Vegeta's fight with the first minion, and Goku's fight with Yakon, and go straight to Gohan's fight with the Boar. While the others were doing that, I had to use Hercule against Android 18. I hated the fact that I had to use Hercule for some scenarios, especially against Android 18. 18 wouldn't even hold back against me either. She would keep spamming her strongest key attacks against me. I had to keep using the special melee attack to where he would still punch his opponent, but his opponent would stand there, while also having the opponent deplete of his or her health every time. I had to keep doing that until either she got a ring out, or she was completely depleted of her health. Same thing with Cell. I didn't even mention the fact that I had to use Hercule against Cell. I had to do the same thing with him too, just so he would stop spamming the Kamehameha Blast at me, or any other strong attack that he would do. It was so annoying to use Hercule. I don't know why they added him to the roster of the game. Back to Gohan's fight with the Boar. Fighting him was a bit difficult, but the game, for some reason, also allowed me to use Goku and Vegeta in that fight as well, which made it a bit easier for me. Skipping the part where the Boar gets away and Vegeta becoming Majin Vegeta after being possessed by Babidi, I finally got to see what Majin Buu looks like in the games and shows. He seemed pretty childish at first glance, but he's pretty annoying to go up against in battle. Even in the show, I couldn't watch him suffocate Vegeta because it was kind of sad to watch. Speaking of which, for Majin Vegeta, using his ultimate moveset, the Final Explosion, is I don't like it because afterwards you have 1% of your health, and then your opponent can just like throw a single punch and that was it, game over. And it was also pretty sad to watch Vegeta sacrifice himself in the show as well, years later. Fast forwarding to Goku's fight with Majin Buu. Obviously, they skipped the part where Goku was teaching Trunks and Goten fusion, and Gohan's training on the Supreme Class planet because there was no fighting scenes there. Using Super Saiyan 3, Goku was pretty broken to use. I didn't even question why the form had long hair because the form itself was pretty cool. Just in case that my opponent gave me no room to recover, I could just spam Goku's explosion moveset in the game, which was actually useful. In the fight, for some reason, it was hilarious watching Buu kill Babidi because the way Majin Buu would talk before getting rid of him, it was hilarious. I don't know. They didn't, surprisingly, they didn't skip the lore where Buu became friends with Hercule and then having the Crooks kill the dog, having Buu create an evil version of himself because of it. That fight was pretty boring because I was more interested in the story. Gotenks' regular melee attack is good, but for some reason I was bored of his strongest moveset, even though he too could become a Super Saiyan 3. It was pretty boring. Ultimate Gohan, on the other hand, had the sickest moveset. I really liked his combos and everything. I didn't know why he was called Ultimate Gohan until years later I got to search up on Google as to why, and that was about it. Majin Buu became more annoying when he started absorbing people, which made him become a tough opponent. Next, Goku would come back after being revived by Elder Kai, and so would Vegeta thanks to King Yama's 24-hour pass, just like they gave Goku during the beginning. Skipping their fight with Boo separately because there was nothing interesting about it to use like the same characters. Their Potara fusion, Vegito on the other hand, was pretty broken to use. I would get into further detail as to why he's called Vegito, but we don't have time for that since it's already pushed the Ultimate Tenkaichi, Budokai Tenkaichi 2 section of this video long enough. We don't talk about Ultimate Tenkaichi. Skipping the part where Goku and Vegeta got everyone out of Boo's possession, he transforms into a smaller version of himself they call Kid Boo. In the shows, he wouldn't say anything; he would just scream. Same with the video games. The game would also skip the part where he blew up the planet and went straight on to the fights with Kai's world. I really hated Boo's movesets when it came to those battles, when it came to the fights. Vegeta, the only thing I could do was spam my strongest key attacks to at least slow Boo down and stop him from using that one melee attack where he would just cover himself and turn himself into a ball and just knock you out senseless. And yeah, that was annoying. But those battles aside, that wraps it up with the Majin Buu saga, which I have to say is the longest scenario than the other ones that I had to do in the game. And that also wraps it up with the Budokai Tenkaichi 2 section of this video. I will cover the other scenarios, but again, they weren't according to the main storyline. Same with GT, actually because Toriyama himself said that it wasn't canon, even though the Super Saiyan 4 transformations was pretty sick. Especially with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, like he was the only broken character to use in the roster. I thought everything would end with Dragon Ball Z, but boy oh boy, was I wrong. As I said before, I thought Dragon Ball Z would be the ending climax of Dragon Ball, but I was wrong. Because one day I would be talking to my uncle about Dragon Ball and the power levels of each character. I would mention the fact that Super Saiyan 3 Goku could topple every single character from the Dragon Ball franchise. Then he asked if I heard of Super Saiyan God. I told him I hadn't as a response. Then he told me that he would recommend that I watch Dragon Ball Super. Back in 2015, I had a TV that was unable to watch any streaming apps, so it was difficult for me to find it. And it wasn't like I couldn't ask for a new TV, so I was in a pickle. Up until we went on a vacation for Florida for 2 weeks. One day I would be chilling on the couch with my family after a long relaxation on the beach. My dad would be looking to see if there was anything interesting for me to watch on TV. Unfortunately enough, he found that one of the streaming channels was streaming Dragon Ball Super. Of course we would click on it to watch it, only to see that Goku seems to be demonstrating a new form of Frieza. After he transforms, when I looked at it at the first time, it looked like your average Super Saiyan level, but everything was blue. He had blue hair, everything. Goku would explain that his transformation was fused between Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan God, calling it Super Saiyan Blue since its original name, Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan, would be a mouthful. Of course I would be confused, because I have not heard of Super Saiyan Gods or Super Saiyan Blue, or even the fact that Krillin mentioned where Goku fought a deity beforehand. It was a lot to take in, as if it didn't surprise me enough. Frieza also had a transformation of his sleeve, turning himself into gold, calling it Golden Frieza. It looked like Frieza was in his final form, except his entire body was gold. That was it. Long story short, there was questions remained unanswered for me. The next episode would of course show Goku losing the fight. Then after when there were some curse words being uttered, my dad had to turn it off since my siblings were far too young. Months later, my mother and siblings were at the store. My brother and I would just be chilling in the car playing on my 3DS. Suddenly I heard Vegeta screaming in the background. I would quietly peek to see what my dad was watching on his phone, only to find that he was watching Dragon Ball Super. Seeing that Vegeta could also transform into Super Saiyan Blue, knocking Frieza senseless afterwards. My dad would notice I was peeking, so he couldn't help but show me what was going on as well. After the episode was over, I was glad that Goku finally had his chance to shine in defeating Frieza one more time and winning it. After that, we hadn't seen the show for a year until one day my dad and I decided to watch Dragon Ball Super again on YouTube, but this time in a whole other arc, the Tournament of Power. YouTube couldn't give us like the full episode because of copyright, so we only got scenes of what was happening. It would show Goku and everyone else going up against a lot of what seemed to be random characters to me. But one what I remember would of course be Jiren, since he was the strongest fighter in the tournament outside of Goku. I couldn't remember all the details that happened in the tournament because it was a long time ago. But many months later, after I finally got a TV and everything else, I was able to watch Dragon Ball Super in order, from the Battle of the Gods arc to Resurrection F, Universe 7 vs. Universe 6, Goku Black, and the Tournament of Power. All of them did not disappoint. I'd say that they did even better they did better than Dragon Ball Z, though it doesn't topple Dragon Ball Z Kai, since it was my childhood. There were some scenes where they gave Vegeta the respect he deserves as well, which I really enjoyed. So I guess that brings us to back in 2017. I would hear one of my middle school teachers talking about the new Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. I was surprised that they would make Broly canon to the main storyline. A year later, the teacher would tell me that he saw the movie, but I was a bit jealous since I was a Dragon Ball fan myself and have been wanting to see it for a long time. That's why back in 2023 I was excited to see Superhero in theaters, because it was my first time experiencing a Dragon movie in the theaters. But rewinding it back to 2018, my teacher explained what the movie was about without spoiling it, and that's all. And all it did was making me wish that I saw it for myself. But when I got home, my dad called me to go up to his room, and when I came in, he already had the Broly movie ready to play. I would watch it with him. I liked how they explained the lore behind the Saiyans one more time, so I knew about it more than ever. Same thing for Broly. I was even surprised that Vegeta was able to reach Super Saiyan God without the ritual, as well as making Gogeta canon from the Fusion Reborn movie. Long story short, that movie did not disappoint. Now we can fast forward back to 2023, where I actually got to see Superhero with my dad. I was surprised that Gohan had a new form after his ultimate form, as well as confused as to what it was. I was also thankful that they showed Piccolo some respect by giving him a new form as well, Orange Piccolo. And that about wraps it up with the movie section, which takes us to the last section of this video. While Toei Animation, Toriyama, and the manga creator Toyotaro were on a hiatus after releasing the Moro arc, I was bored. The only thing I could do was play Dragon Ball games or do anything else Dragon Ball related, or so I thought. One day I would find a YouTuber who creates amazing fan mangas and theories, Unrelate Gaming. I really liked the ideas and the fan-made arcs that he made. The first one I watched was the Myrtle arc, The Fallen Angel of Universe 13. My uncle recommended that I watch it after when I was done reading the Moro arc. It did not disappoint, especially how he wrote the plots and storylines. I would remember myself being shocked that Murdo could defeat everybody he came across while also having the powers to travel through timelines. Then there was the top 5 strongest in the multiverse, as well as the spin-offs that's going to connect to the sequel to the top 5 strongest. And if you're watching this on Real, I cannot wait for you to release the sequel, because I am betting it'll be a masterpiece. Long story short, I was able to keep myself entertained with these fan mangas for a long time until Toyotaro released the Granola arc and the manga version of Superhero. And there you have it. That is the story of how I got into Dragon Ball. I enjoyed growing up with the shows, games, mangas, and more, as well as finding other people who are Dragon Ball fans like I am. If it weren't for Toriyama, I wouldn't have such an amazing childhood. So I would like to thank him again for making all this possible. Dragon Ball will continue to live within his fans as well as his work. There isn't a proper way to end this video, so thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.